Institute. Yeah, I'm gonna. I'm realizing I'm speaking in English. I'm going to give an introduction in Portuguese. Yes. Então, pessoal, nós aqui do Germânia estamos com o nosso convidado especial, Thor Elptirdalr, direto ele é norueguês, mas ele está nos Estados Unidos. Tem o canal NORSE Magic Beliefs. Aconselhamos todos a acompanhar. All right. So here we are with our special guest, Thor Elptirdalr. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Thank you. I do my best. And all right. So the topic of our talk here is we want to try to get the perspective of someone from that is native to religion about the magic, and how do you see the magic? Like, for example, do you use any magic practices in your daily life? Do you do anything? Or for you, like you are more like me, for example, because here in this group we have both André Phoebes and the other André that says Germania Institute there. They use magic quite fairly, the runes and all that. I am not that. That's not my thing. So what is as somebody that lives there, what's your approach to it?
So, one thing that I can say, we'll get into this a lot more later in the video, but the magic and religious ritual, what we do and the sources, and hey, even things that we all do in our regular day-to-day life, it's all connected, and most of it kind of functions the same. It's just little tips and things here. It might be leaving an offering on a tree because you feel like it, or leaving some offerings out to the birds, or like you're done with your food, throw it away, give it to the birds. This is what ancient humans did. It's just that they did it for a purpose, and it can be really simple things, just like I said, leaving trees out to a bird, or even like carving some runes, like something that you want to happen, so it's there. Or it can be something really advanced, like rituals that take like half an hour to complete, or just things like meditation or dream interpretation. All these types of things can be kind of grouped together as magic and animist and pagan. So that's we all do it. It's just which types we focus on more.
Okay. All right. So there are things that they don't need the formality, right? There are things that they don't need the formality for us to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. It can be anything. It's different people might have different words, and that's a problem too. Some people will define magic differently. If we look historically, it was very, very broad, and maybe it wasn't even called magic. Maybe it was called science back in things like ancient Greece and things like that. Some modern people associate magic with Harry Potter. I'll take this wand and shoot a lightning bolt. But everyone has a different idea of it. But it's I focus on the oldest, like most ancient belief system for it.
All right.
And by focusing in something that's old and like in the roots of the behavior and roots of the belief, I think that it tends to be more simple, doesn't it? It tends to be more like connected to the nature of the religious practice at all, in my opinion. Not something pretty like I know. I try to say there's not fancy and full of like things attached to it. It's more simple in my perspective.
With less
like I like to
right?
to say, less formality. Yeah, not less respect, less formality. Is my point of view.
But then, so my biggest beef with the whole magic scene is that how do you sort out what is authentic and makes sense add to the things that are crazy new age stuff, Wicca. That how do you sort it out? Because to me that was always the thing that I would go and say, I'm not gonna. Maybe no, not for me. Leave it at that.
Yeah, 100%. That's the biggest problem for some people who want to get into it. Is finding out what is at the end of the day is what you believe in. If you believe it might work, then you'll try it. And some magic, you'll think, oh, it's okay. That's no, there's no way that sounds like a bunch of crap. I'm not going to do that. So it depends on what you believe in at the end of the day and what you want to try out.
Okay.
And that's the problem. A lot of magic practice comes from like Wicca in the past
Yeah.
60, 70 years. And I never had any interest in that. I read that and like, okay, that's not interest. They have some like very ancient historical based stuff in Wicca, but most of it is absolutely nothing. So
Yeah.
for me, it was at least if we find an example of magic that was used in ancient times, that's not just something that somebody made up 50 years ago. That's something that our ancestors believed in for many thousands of years. So that makes me more trusting in it.
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, that's what we try to do here, because we try to be reconstructionists, and for us, it's very difficult to have access to information, right? So something that happens very commonly here is someone says that they were taught, I don't know, cider from like this old
What is
lady.
the correct pronunciation of Cider?
Cider.
Cider.
Cider. Okay.
Oh,
Very good.
Like
So,
TH, like
almost there.
TH on the where the D is.
okay, like
Cider.
TH.
Oh.
So cider.
Yeah,
Cider.
yeah.
Okay. But I'm going to butcher the pronunciation anyway. But I'll do my best. So something that happens here, which is kind of funny and curious, is that someone says that they've been to Germany or Scandinavia, or they have like this great grandmother that came from Europe that has taught him or her the secret of cider, and then they start all this nonsense. And is this something that happens there in Europe too, or is just something that Brazilian people invent to create some sort of I'm the person that knows this?
Yeah. Brazil and the US will do that a lot too. Yeah, that's interesting. It happens in Brazil too because I see it a lot in the US.
Okay.
And it just doesn't happen in Europe, I think, because people can check and verify it a lot easier. Someone says my great grandfather, like if they say that in Brazil, people think, oh really? But if people say that in Europe, they're like, no, we all know that they're lying if they say that in Europe, unless there may be like Sami or something. If they're Sami or if they're from Finland, because then it's maybe possible that these traditions lasted up until 100 years ago. But other than that, it's not possible. Not for Cider, at least.
Okay, and like for example, in the sources, do we have any connections between like a vulva and Cider?
Oh yeah, of course. That's for sure. Vulva is. It depending on the source, that's it, but it's almost always Verva who is the one practicing cider. So they were like professionals that would have known these things.
Okay, so it's
a question. Was Cider it's something evil in the view of the ancient people?
No, not at all. This is something. Of course, when Christianity came around, these things were made very illegal, and that was viewed as evil. But in the Norse world, in the Viking Age, and what maybe it was done as well before the Viking Age in the Germanic areas of Europe, we don't really know. But Yeah, not evil at all. It was either was something that even kings and chieftains would like hire Völva. If a Völva comes to town, they would do say that, and the king would pay them or something like that. So it's very accepted in society, but a bit taboo and a bit shameful, especially if a man was doing it. That was the most shameful thing you could do, actually. But for women, it's kind of like, yeah, it's okay.
Oh, the most shameful thing.
They refer to any man practicing say that as like kneading or erigi or things like that, like the most unmasculine kind of insult we have in
Uh-huh.
Norse, in Old Norse
So
language.
magic was something. So magic was something like feminine, I would say.
Yeah,
But
Or
that
profession.
just-
aspect of
profession.
magic.
it's
Yeah,
just
they're-
about Zyder or another.
just Zyder, just
Just Zyder.
Zyder.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause that was.
Okay.
We can get into it more if you want and describe what it is, but Zyder was a kind of like a very feminine art. There's other types of magic, absolutely very masculine. It was mostly men practicing it, but Zyder definitely for women.
And was it something practiced by everyone in the ancient times, or
Common folk.
by with people with specific role in society?
Yes, what I believe it was. I say this a lot. These spiritual things that were a lot more common the further back we go. But what we know from the kind of how common it was from the sources and the archaeological finds, it was pretty common. It was pretty common to have especially if you were in the north of Norway, it was pretty common to have a Finn come into town and practice either, or maybe you go to Finland or the north of Norway and hire someone to practice cider for you and give you some divination, some prophecy. One cool aspect that we can look at is the archaeological finds in a city of Kaupang. For example, we found what we think are 2 or 3 Völva buried there. So that city was 1,000 people. And that city, like, we think it was at its peak for about 200 years maximum. So you can do the math. There was probably like one-sided practitioner per every 1,000 people. So it'd be like a doctor, basically, like as common as a doctor. Before in history, maybe more common, but we just don't know for sure.
What was the name of the city you mentioned there?
It's like the same role, like a doctor.
Like a service you can hire.
Just one detail. What was the name of the city you mentioned there?
Kaupang. That's Kaupang.
Yes, Kau.
Pang.
All right.
And that's where I'm from. Right, exactly there. There's nothing there now. But in the Viking Age, it was the biggest settlement for a certain amount of time.
Okay, is that in Trondheim?
No. It'll be the southeast of Norway.
Okay. All right.
Trondheim is more to the north, I guess. Next to Tromsø.
Okay. And quick question. You mentioned, let's define what the hell is cider, because we talk about it, everybody has their own ideas, and so what the hell is it? How can we, define it? Is there a definition? That's the first good question.
So we know a few things about the act of it. I say it's very similar to shamanism. Some people don't like that comparison, but when you look at it, it's a lot of the same things were practiced. So we know about say that it was like a ritual where one person, one spiritual leader was kind of leading it. Maybe there was 2 people helping them, and they were getting up on some sort of platform. They worked themselves up into a frenzy, and they'd dance, or they had a trance. They got into a trance state. They weren't quite all there. And then from there, they could do whatever. It was a big spectacle, so everyone around was watching. And then the results was that they could do like give prophecies. They could cast curses. They could mostly divination, and they could also shapeshift, things like that. They could send their spirit out and take control of an animal, or send their spirit into different realms.
All right.
And it was also very, very feminine. We know that's probably the main aspect of it, and it was shameful if a man did it. So we think that it might have been something kind of sexual, even maybe like a dance performance where she was getting naked or just dancing around and like in a sexual way.
Right.
It sounds like that. So it's not quite shamanism, but it has a lot of the same traits.
Okay. Yeah, and that kind of makes me wonder what the hell are grandmothers or great grandmothers doing, dancing naked, And I don't want to, you know what I mean?
Stop! I'm picturing things here.
Yeah, that's not the kind of, all right, kind of devalues the whole thing. But anyway, all right. And then what is, okay, so and then we obviously have Gauder, right?
Yep.
Other than Zyder. So what is the, is Gauder something that was more appropriate for a man to
perform,
to take part into, and why?
Definitely. Galded is a lot more complicated, and that definitely changed of what that means over time. In the oldest sources, in the sagas and even some Eddas, Galded was very specifically that you would modern people today would call it a spell or a chant. It was like some recited verse or short poem to bring about the whatever results you wanted. So Galded specifically meant like something like that. As we get later on, it was attached, like what you see in Iceland, though, that Galded stuff. The magical staves, those were considered Galded as well. And Galded, by the way, it could be accompanied by rune magic. Like you would carve some runes and then you would say some Galded. We have a few sagas mentioning that. But then the kind of Galded like chants disappeared and they became staves. And then later on in history, it just referred to all kinds of magic. Galded in modern Icelandic, it can mean just magic, any type of magic. Like even Harry Potter stuff is called Galded. So that's a lot more complicated history.
So there was a evolution from spells to all kind of magic. Kind of like,
yep.
Okay.
Well, here in Brazil, we associate Galded with the spells using the voice.
Oh yeah,
vibration of voice. It's correct.
Yeah,
is
that's
it correct?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Nice. It's like a mantra.
Yeah, like mantra. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Yes.
I was reading a book called The Semiethics of Faith. Actually, Dr. Scott Shell recommended it in his channel, and it's a great book. You all guys, I think you know what I'm talking about. And now you're talking about how the spell is important, and I kind of remember something I read in this book saying that in the old days the role of the poet was considered magic as well because of the power of incantation, the power of saying things, and creating formulas, actually using the words. So the role of the poet, and somehow now I'm thinking about this, Odin is always related to magic, and he's the god of the poet, and he's poetry and stuff like that. I think it's kind of related.
Yeah, for sure. It's the same time. I think we even have sources that Odin did Galded at some points, but like I would have a hard time remembering which ones. But I can get back to that. Yeah, if you have the Poetic Edda in Old Norse, or any of the sagas in Old Norse, you can just do a control find on the screen and just type in Galded, and it will show up exactly where it is. So that's the easiest way to find it.
I have the sagas in Old Norse. I don't have the Eddas, the Poetic Edda in Old Norse. But that is.
Oh yeah, those I could send you a link. That's all online too. It's easier to find as well. There's lots of those Old Norse editions.
Yeah, we had a hard time to find the Hellion.
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Scott is a good one to ask about that.
Yes.
Yeah, we got it. We got it from Dr. Sass, actually.
Yeah.
From Robert
Okay.
Sass.
Yeah, awesome. Robert's good too. I like him a lot.
Yes, we like actually the work of Robert Sass was kind of an inspiration because he always mentions the sources, you know.
Yeah.
Then we were like, okay, this guy he knows what he's doing, you know. So here we have in Brazil a saying that goes, "You kill the snake and you show the stick." That it makes no sense in English, but yeah. Anyways, so do you practice in a Gauder or in any or
For me, no. I will do some mantras, so I guess I do. During meditation, I will do some mantras, and I could consider that Galder. But that's one of the things that I had a hard time getting into, because I had a hard time believing in it. So this is what I'm writing my book about, actually, because it's so
nice.
confusing to me.
Nice.
Like
Oh, you're writing a book.
how
That's nice.
I'm writing a book, and it's all about all of the archaeological finds that we have on these runic inscriptions and these texts of Galdir or prayers.
Okay.
And it's like it always confused me. Okay, how does the words we speak? How did humans actually believe that would change something, do magic? It would change the weather. It would curse people. It would, do these types of things. It sounds so crazy to believe. So, yeah, I don't believe in it 100%. So that's why I don't do it. Yeah, I completely acknowledge it's great because literally every human in the world at some point believe these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, believing is the key. So if you don't believe, it's not going to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now, yeah, about your book, nice. You have 4 people wanting to buy it right here.
It's been working on it for like 2 years, but yes, it's getting close to finished.
Right. Yeah, you can already ship it to Brazil. We'll just we just hope that the currency rate gets better for us. You know?
Oh yeah, is it bad right now?
Yeah.
It's a bad problem for us.
Yeah.
Actually,
With $1, you can buy a car here.
kind of.
I'm joking. It's
But
something
actually,
like that.
Norway
It's not
is
so
not
bad.
Norway is not in the Eurozone, right?
No, they have their own. They have the kroner. They have their own
Yeah.
currency, and that's low now too. And the dollar is very strong. So I'm having a good time when I travel back there.
Good, very good. Yeah, because you're in LA right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And another question something that we would like to have the perspective of someone from Europe, especially Scandinavian country, is the because you mentioned the Gauderstaffer, right? And then we have the Gauderbrock, right? Because so in that book there's a lot of syncretism involved, like it mentions Jesus, So how can someone what's your perspective on using the Gauderbrock as a pagan? Is it really pagan if I mention Jesus? I mean, what's your take on it?
So there's a couple things. A lot of these. I mean, we know this happened. We know that magic continued, and it was used by the church. And a lot of these ancient pagan, especially Galdir, these chants, these mantras, and things like that. Even though they were practiced in Christian times, some of them as late as the 1800s.
Okay,
there was almost the exact same one practice in pagan times. We have this. You guys know the Merseburg charms, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's an old Saxon or old High German like charm to heal a horse's broken leg. And it invokes Fol and Wodan, which is we think Balder and Odin.
Yep.
That exact same charm was told in Sweden in the 1800s, except it was a prayer to Jesus, but the words were the exact same. We find other ones like the same thing from I forget what it's called. it's like something to get rid of worms out of the nose.
Oh,
I forget the
Oh yeah.
so that in the Scandinavian folk tradition from the 1800s. We have it in, like, I think it's from again, like in northern Germany, as it's written in Old High
Mhm.
German just after pagan times, and we have it in the Vedic system many thousands of
Oh.
years before that, all the way in
Okay.
India. So these things are not these things continue, and just because it invokes Jesus, that doesn't make it Christian. Maybe they just switched out the names, but if
Yeah,
anyone is interested in more about that, you can get the Galdere book, the one written by Stephen Flowers, and in the back of that book, in like kind of the notes section, he goes over every single spell in there and like examines its pagan history. Some of them are not pagan at all. There's no proof that we have anything, but a lot of them are, and we can be pretty sure that they were used in pagan times.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Because we have
yeah. Because the same
no. Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Abner.
Because the same way you said that the structure is the same.
Mm.
You know, so basically, if the symbol is the structure maintained, so you can be sure that it's pagan. The same thing with some myths, I believe.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's nice.
Yeah, and then because we had someone here that he translated the Galdere book to Portuguese, and he had a little bit of a, let's say that he had a problem distributing to the people that paid for it, but uh, yes, and then we had this
There's one.
there's always this conflict
Oh, wow, yeah.
about, yes, that's the one. Show it again, Hida, but a little. Show it again.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mhm.
there you go.
No, it's a nice
Yeah,
version. It's a
so
nice version.
and
It's a nice version.
so there's this conflict, because the first thing that you open is I think it's the Lord's Prayer, right?
Mm.
The first thing they see when you open
Yeah.
is the Lord's Prayer. So people get this conflict. So how can we, aside from looking at Stephen Flowers, are there any indications that we can use to kind of sort out what is, or we can't just like I have to study a lot to find out which ones are which, or what is it?
It's I mean, even me, and even Stephen Flowers, he's a lot more educated than me in these things, and even he like has a hard time discovering the pagan roots to things.
Uh-huh.
So there's no unless you can clearly connect it to something pagan. There might be something in there. Of course, it's easy if there's an actual pagan record we have of that spell from much
Mhm.
older in time. That's easiest, and there are some of those. But other ones, it might be something as simple as like the language style. It might be as simple as something like armor or weapons that was used during pagan times, but not
Okay.
not at the time where the Galdere book or any other of those sources were written. Those later on ones. So there's just little tiny clues in some of these that we can use to tell like, okay, this has a pretty good chance that is pagan and much older. But yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to do.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a puzzle from thousands of years ago and missing pieces. It's hard
Yeah.
to form the whole
Yeah,
picture.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But then now I wanna approach the most common magic, system, which are the runes, right?
Mhm.
So we hear from scholarly people that say no, runes had no esoteric or magical meaning. They were just an alphabet. Because you have like, this is a hammer, this is a calm, Uh, but is it really though? Is it something that it was just an alphabet? We know that they didn't use it for divination, right?
Yeah,
But
There's no
no
evidence.
evidence for it.
for
Could be.
divination, right?
So there's something similar that could be runes, but we don't know for sure.
Okay, yeah. So what was the like? How do you see the meaning of the runes for our forefathers, our ancestors?
So it's the meanings that are a bit more difficult to trace back to the most ancient of times. Were the runes used for magic? Absolutely. Anyone who
Okay.
says that they weren't has not read the sources, because we have quite a few examples. We have Egil's saga, where he carves runes multiple times for various aspects of magic, to do different things. Also in Viga Grim's saga. And there's quite a few other of the Icelandic sagas where they use runes to carve it and do something, whether to kill someone or curse someone or like heal someone even. So we have that's very, very clear.
Okay.
We also have some like runic amulets that make no sense. They're not language. Like it might be a rune stick, or it might be an amulet, or it might be a fraction of a skull or something, or an animal bone with runes carved into it, but it's not any words. It's not any words in Old Norse or any Germanic or any language at all. So we think that those were used for magic as well. It's just the meanings of the runes we can't really the meanings of runes that people have today, we can't really tie those back to so far. The earliest we can go is like I think about the 900s or 1000s is the earliest rune poems. So if anyone wants to learn more about the original meanings of the runes, they can look at the rune poems, because there it's actually like a full like little poem with a little rhyme about what each rune means. And there was in Anglo-Saxon England, it was in Iceland, and in Norway from later on in time. So that's about the earliest we can associate the names of the runes to, a little more than 1,000 years ago. And we have some, I think, in the oldest text, like a Gothic translation of the Bible, actually, the runes are also in there, and a couple of them are referred to by name. And that's 1700 years ago, just shortly after the Goths became Christian. So I believe the rune meanings are actually very, very old. But yeah, scholars can fight about that all they want. But at least we can say 1,000 years ago they had meaning to them.
Why do they? Okay, so yeah, so because I've just this morning I watched Jackson Crawford video, and he's one of the guys. He says no, they were just an alphabet. Why do scholars insist on that? Is this like a prejudice against magic, or
you said that archaeological finds that runes without a meaning, it's not words. Then maybe it's for magical use. Yeah.
It's like a word. It says like gaga or like gag or ga,
cuckoo
or
magic,
like something like something. It almost sounds like mantras, actually. So that could be it too. But it's also some are like completely random letters, and we don't know. Same thing in Galdabuk, actually. There's runes we find in there, and some of the later Icelandic magical books, there's runes together, but they don't have any. That's not a word, so they're not letters. So yeah, they're anyone should know better who has read into those sources that runes had more meaning than just for writing words.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's very, sometimes it's frustrating when you see those guys. I know that, for example, Scott Shell, he talks about the magical or the esoteric meaning of the runes. He's I think he's the only scholar that does that. And he's very good at runology, but everybody else goes with it's just an alphabet kind of rune,
Yeah. I think he wrote a book on her. It might have been his PhD thesis too, Scott. So that's a great source to check out too. If he's a lot more knowledgeable in the runes than I am.
I think he's. Is there anybody that's more knowledgeable in the runes than him in like the whole world? Because he knows a lot, right?
There's maybe Well, there's different people looking into different aspects of the runes. Some of them are looking at the archaeological finds. Some of them are looking at the runes as a language, and some of them are examining all these different things. But as for runes used as magic, yeah, Scott Shell, Stephen Flowers are a couple. They're probably the two most reliable. There's a lot of people writing about the runes and magic,
Right.
but very many of them are not trustworthy, I would say.
Okay. So,
But
so
those two for sure.
there are two guys that are very popular here, like Edred Thorson.
Yeah,
know?
that's Stephen Flowers. Yeah,
Stephen
Okay,
Flowers
yeah,
and
Flowers.
same guy.
Okay.
It's just a different name.
yes, it's the same guys. What do you think about the work of Edred Thorson, Ralph Bloom?
Yeah. Oh, Ralph Bloom is good too. We could come back to that maybe, but Edred Thorson is definitely good. But because he has the PhD and he has the he has the historical kind of evidence behind him that he writes about. But he doesn't stop there. A lot of the scholars will stop there and only speak about the history. Edred Thorson or Stephen Flowers, he'll push it a little bit further. So he'll take in some of these and he tests it out. He tests out rune magic. So and he'll learn from these books that come from Germany, maybe just 100 years ago, something like that. A lot of these German mysticism type people looked at the runes, and they're again not the most historical sources, but hey, they tried it out, and they tried out rune magic, and they came back with some theories and some things that they believed in, and some very good arguments. So that's going like beyond the scholarly way of writing, and that's great. I think that's great because we have to try these things out if we want to see what actually works.
Yeah, because this was one of our debates some months ago, because we have our own theories, at Germania, not just about the runes, but about the mythology in itself. And then we're like, okay, just talking about it is not going to lead anywhere. We need to, get stuff done. We need to practice and see what happens. And so we know that runes were not used for divination authentically, but now they are, right? What are your thoughts on that? Are you okay? You don't mind? Or you go, oh my God, that's terrible. I want to smash their faces.
No, I think just to start with, I'm sorry. We are asking this kind of questions because we want to know what a real Norwegian thinks about it. Like you don't see people are destroying anything or trying to do anything
because it's your
wrong
culture,
with your native culture. This is the most.
And I just want to point out that Abner mentioned real Norwegian, like there are fake Norwegians. But,
and there's a lot of people out there that pretend to be Norwegian.
Oh yeah, that could be true. All right.
So what Brazil is too?
In Brazil too.
A lot.
In Brazil too.
Everyone that is blonde, long-haired, and like Amon Amarth think is Norwegian here.
Like André.
Like the guy in the middle here.
Actually, André, he doesn't pretend he's Norwegian. He assumes his Germanic kind of side, But
but jokes aside.
But see, in Brazil that happens all the time, man, all the time. People, do you know the joke of I did the ancestry DNA test, I got 0.01% Viking. It's absolutely
there
real.
Too. Wow.
Yeah. It's epidemic.
It's absolutely real here. Yeah.
Hey, it's not even about being a Norwegian, right? It's about any Germanic people. If we go back far enough, practice this same religion too. And the Germanic people migrated everywhere. They migrated over all of Europe. So most people are going to have just a little bit of ancestry in there that practiced this religion and did these things.
Yeah, exactly. But and do you use like runes in your? Because we know you fight. So do you meditate or like on a rune to before a fight, or do you carve runes on your equipment? I don't know. I'm guessing here. Do you use that?
I do more of the carving runes. There's a few ways people can do it. There's meditating on the runes. There's even chanting the runes, like Galded or mantra people do. I don't know if you guys have heard about the rune yoga, but they're like making themselves into position
Yeah.
like
Yes.
runes. All very cool stuff. But yeah, I don't do any. I just carve some runes. That's about all I do.
Okay. Yeah. So we So we have yeah. So there's some Brazilian people that they call berserkers, and they fight MMA, and they scream. Yeah, they scream "dude" before.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know. I guess if
maybe work.
if that's
It's okay.
Well,
If
we know
that's-
they did that, but it was Odin. This was in
Yeah.
Heimskringla, in one of the first like chapters, that the warriors would shout Odin's name because they would want him to come during the battle and get on their side. So that's
Yeah.
a very real practice, and I do that.
awesome.
Yeah, but that's awesome. That's awesome, because think about it. If you shout cheer before fighting, you kind of can lose an arm during the fight. So I don't think it's
maybe
wise
a
enough.
Hands, one hand.
Yeah, lose a hand.
But
That's
if you can lose an eye.
That's okay.
Listen,
It's okay. You can punch with you cannot punch with your eye. You can punch with both hands. So
Yeah. It's better in this scenario. It's better to
Yeah.
have both hands. Nice, very nice. Really, now deviating a little bit from the topic of magic. So something that one of the things that we theorize here is that actually, for example, Wodenas was a different figure than Odin in the Eddas, because we feel like Odin kind of like accumulated roles and maybe myths. What's her take on this? Because I know that Robert Sass doesn't agree with that. I know that Robert Sass thinks that Wodenas, from when Tacitus mentions Mercury. So we tend to see Wodenas more like the psychopomp, that deals with death and all that, which is very different from Odin, who is the king of gods, royalty,
the All Father.
Yeah, exactly. So we feel that Thor had much more of a prominent role that maybe we don't know of, right? And so do you see there's an evolution between from Wodenas to Odin, or we are going cuckoo here?
It's hard to say. So of course it's the same god. He's called by the same name. They mean basically the same thing, except Odin's name means specifically the frenzied one, or the ecstatic one. Vodanas means like Lord of the frenzied. So difference in the name over 500 years or so. In function, it's so hard to say. Because we don't have any written records of Vodanas and what people thought about him during the Germanic tribal age, when all we know is what Tacitus was writing about him. So we don't know any myths. We do have the Eddas that mention the myths about Odin, and the sagas that mention the myths about Odin. They're from a lot later on in time, of course. But we also have Odin in some of the rune stones, right? Some of the rune stones that are much older, like depicting scenes from the sagas and the Eddas. So we, of course, we can think that the myths can date back to then at least. But the question is, how far do the myths go back, and how much did they change over the years? We just don't know. But essentially, it would be kind of the same. And if we go back even further than that, it would be like all the Indo-European gods would be like one and the same. It would have been. But Odin is very special because we don't know. We don't really have a Indo-European cognate for him. So we think that he was developed much later on in time. that's all I can say about that. So Odin may not be as old as Thor, for example, or Tyr, who we can date back to much older Indo-European times. But yeah, that's there's no way we can know how old these myths are. Just that the god was at least there. Odin was at least there 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, we have here like running around this theory that Woden comes from like a Celtic
Or
Celtic
Sami culture too.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the Celts were much older, you know. So personally, I'm not necessarily a big fan of that because there are many differences between the Celtic culture and the Germanic
Yeah.
culture, right? And then I know they interacted, especially in the south there of Germany, that was very Celtic. But we also know that Germanic peoples, they were very in guard focused, right? So Leo, I'm not big on that theory that they kind of imported. Maybe there's also a theory that he's Sami, you know.
Or maybe a native divinity
Just a native god.
of Germanic tribes.
Yeah, that
Not
didn't
something
come
that
from the
came from the Proto-Indo-European.
I think there's a whole book on that. I forget what it's called right now, but it's I read it. You'll be completely convinced that Odin is a native god to the north of Europe. I'll send you guys the name of it after. I forget what it's called right now.
All right.
Okay, right.
Yeah, because that would kind of that would explain many things. That would explain many things. Now that we are on this topic, something that personally annoys me is that every little thing that people find is people immediately assume is related to Odin, right? They find like there's a tooth with the room. Is this Odin? Right?
It must be Odin. Yeah.
Exactly. Everything is everything is so Odin centric, and like we forget like Thor, we forget Freyr, right? And the three ones in Uppsala, right? So how can we get out of this Odin super focus? We have been doing a lot of work on Thor. You know, we've been trying to show other aspects of Thor. We have been investigating. I personally have been doing like a comparative work where I'm comparing Thor with Hercules and then Jupiter, then Indra, and finally it's going to be Perun and Perkunos, right? So how can we get out of this Odin-centered? And I blame this on Vikings, that goddamn TV show.
Well,
Yeah.
there's some truth to it. There's some legitimacy to it because Odin is the only god that appeared as a human in the Viking Age. We have quite a few sagas that mention Odin actually showed up, and none of the other gods. So what that is, I'm a believer, and it's the spiritual energy of Odin who has come and possessed a human for a short amount of time, like his name means, and like many cultures around the world believe. But yeah, Odin's not sitting up there in the sky like trying to send people messages. I don't think we have any sources of that.
Yeah. So here we have this meme because people usually in pagan groups, like when it's early in the morning, they say Odin wishes you a good day. So
Yeah, like
I wonder how good it's going to be that day because damn, right?
full of mischief. Yeah. Well,
maybe to get people out of that, maybe because it would be more likely the Norns more than anything else. The Norns would be the ones kind of responsible for your fate and how your day is going, and if something bad happened to you, you would curse the Norns, and if something good happened to you, you would thank the Norns. Things like that. We have a lot of sources for that, so maybe people, to get out of the Odin thing, they could try and look to the Norns for it, their fate and what happens in their life.
Yeah.
There's something pretty hard to do, especially in South America. I don't know how this is happening in the North America and in Europe, but in Brazil and South America in general, I think that people just change the name of Yahweh, of the Christian
Mm.
God, and put Odin in the place. So
Mm.
this is how they are used to. So, oh, I wish protection. So, oh, Odin, protect me, and stuff like
Mm.
that. So this is hard. I think that people need to change their mentality first and understand that there's a whole different system of beliefs, a whole different religions, not only swap the names and, just adding to what you guys are talking.
Yeah, yeah,
This is
100%.
this is the problem.
Yeah, especially because Odin's not going to protect you. He's going to test you, right? He's going to, oh, you want to be one of my guys? So, let's see what you're capable.
Let's see
You know?
if you have what it takes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
because,
guys, just a second. I'm sorry. I need to go
you got
back
to
to
get
work.
to work.
So, yeah. Thank you all for joining, especially Thor. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time
Good
and
to meet.
patience. So,
See
Bye
you,
bye,
man.
and
Abner.
Thank you.
See you.
Odin protect you all.
Very funny.
Sorry.
Very funny. All right. Yeah, very nice. So we have this mentality here for sure in Brazil. And a curiosity of mine is, what is the pagan scene there in Europe? Because here in Brazil it's growing, and we know that in America it's growing. What is it in Europe? How's it looking in Europe? Because my impression is that we have very few and far apart people that are pagans because they want to come back to their ancestral faith. And because I mentioned this in the beginning, like when we started talking. So, well, what is the situation? Is it growing there?
Yeah, yeah. It's I would say the only difference is in Europe, but it's getting this way in America too. It's not that I don't care how big it grows. I mean, of course, it would be great if it grows, but we want the right people and the right mindsets coming into the religion, because for the past 50 years or so, it's been 90% just weird people who you don't want to meet. Just the weirdest people of society are drawn to paganism. Not all. There's been some great people in the past 50 years, but most of them have been weird. But what's happening today in the past few years are people are actually getting into it. You're not just getting the weird, magical Wicca, Harry Potter people into paganism. You're getting just average, good, honorable people coming into it and say, "Oh, well, I never thought I'd be there, but this kind of makes sense to me." So that's happening in Europe, and I can see it happening in America too. I don't know about Brazil, maybe not, but yeah, that's a very good thing where it's going lately.
Nice. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have that perspective. You know. All right, guys. On my end, I think that we had a very good conversation. Do you have Thor? Do you have any questions you want to ask us about situation here in Brazil?
Yeah, how is it? How do you guys get together with like meetings? How do you meet each other? Is it all online? Do you get together to do some practices or holidays certain times of year, or meeting up at concerts? What is what?
Okay.
How do you guys meet each other and organize a community there?
Well, um, it's online so far because, as you can imagine, uh, people. This is very obscure and kind of bizarre here, because Brazil is a very Christian country, and even here in the South, especially more in the South, that we have all those immigrants. Um, so we meet online. So one day, when my first son was born, I was like, okay, I need to have more pagan friends because I have zero pagan friends. Then I started joining groups, and then I found a guy that Diogo, his name is not here, and then Diogo was like the how do you say it there? Here, the guy from the Avengers,
Uh,
the dude with the eye patch,
yes, I forget. Unhappily, the
the one that
Nick
gets
Fury, Nick Fury,
Nick Fury, yes, exactly. So he was the Nick Fury. Then he talked with Phoebes, talking with Heda, and then we created a group that was and from people from our state, which is Santa Catarina, which is like in the south. There are 3 states, so this is kind of the state in the middle there. So people from here, because the idea was to create a community. Then we realized eventually, okay, we need to open up because we need more, and because there are many weird people coming up. So we opened up, and now we have the study group. We have never met in person. We have been kind of organizing that, but you know how things are. There's always something that comes up. I actually have to go to André's house because he made a Thor plaque for me. With a passage from. Okay, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. Heimskring's saga. I think I don't know. And yeah, and I need to go. Then I'm going to finally meet one of our guys. But Hieda has been saying that he's going to come. Yeah, that's the one he made. I'm going to hang it on my wall here.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm going to meet him. But Hieda, he's been promising to come here, but he's all talk. No. Yeah.
Oh, and as well, we celebrate the main holidays online the most of time, but we follow an agenda based on the Old Saxon calendar, because our path it's most the Old Saxon paganism. And well, we felt a necessity to share our studies with the rest of the country, and it's because we created the Germania Institute to share our knowledge, because there is a lot of weird things here. Mixed with Wicca and another weird
politics.
Things. Yes, that are a big problem with polarization here, and it's contaminating the paganism here, I think. And our mission is bring the old ways knowledge to the practice here.
Yeah, without any sprinkle of political ideology,
Yeah. That's a problem. That's a problem everywhere. That's good. You see, good you have that. So if you go out then, and if you're doing, do you ever go do any like bloots, or do you celebrate any of the holidays? Do you go out in nature? Do you have a like altar or hygge set up like in the nature near you, or how do you do some of that stuff?
All right. I guess each one of us does differently, right? In my case, I live in a small. I live in a big city. I live in a small apartment. I really don't have much of a place, So I try to do basically like on my everyday thing. My everyday things. I try to remember and honor my ancestors, and that. But I know, for example, that Thebes usually goes to nature. He has his altar in his house, and then he does a whole preparation, and we follow the winter nights, Yule, and Sigurblot as the three main holidays. Yes, 3 main holidays. But then, of course, each one of us has their own special or specific holiday that they celebrate, And I don't know how Hieda does it. How do you do it? Yeah.
Well, it's a mix of you and Phoebus.
Okay.
Well, I live in a very big city, São Paulo. Um, uh, well, but we have great parks like Ibirapuera, with a lot of nature, trees, animals, and sometimes I celebrated a lot at the park. Sometimes with my family in my house, in my home. And I do my best to follow my beliefs and keep in practice.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Me too. I'm in the middle of a big city. I don't get to. Yeah, you have to drive 2 hours to get into somewhere in nature here. So it's
Yeah.
not ideal. It's not ideal for the modern life. Of course, we could do it a
Yeah.
lot better if we were living 1,000 years ago. But yeah, we can work for it. And there's other things that are important today. It's work and finances, and ideally maybe buy, like Leo, you're working with United Homestead, so
Yes.
maybe buy some land so we can actually get to doing these things in the real traditional way one day.
Yeah, that's my actual end goal. That's what I want. That's what I've been planning this year to do. I want to move to a smaller city, and then I want to buy a bigger piece of land. For example, Phoebes, he lives in a rural area. He lives in a rural area. He has a lot of access to nature. He has his own garden. And I believe that this is crucial for our religion, having this contact with nature, not being in an apartment, for example. So yeah, so my goal is to, at the end of the year, have my own small homestead in a small city. Oh, by the way, there's like just 45 minutes from where I live, up the hills, there's a city where they have 2 radio stations that only play German. They don't speak German in the radio stations. So it's going to feel very. Once I move there, it's going to feel very authentic.
What's the nature like there in the south of Brazil? Because I know it's a lot of kind of tropical forest and stuff in the nature. You get more in the north, but is the south more like mountainy? Is it more like pine forestish, or is it still pretty tropical there?
On the coast is more tropical, but
And the countryside, there is a trees like pines.
Okay.
It's not
but we have a specific
similar, but it's like how can I say? It's like a pine. It's like a pine.
Yeah,
Okay.
the name of the tree is Araucaria.
Araucaria. Yeah.
I put in the chat here. Maybe you can see.
Yeah.
So it's a very tall tree, and the canopy is like round, and then we have so that's basically the and meadows, and then more in the south of Brazil, in the southernmost state.
Yes.
We have lots of meadows.
There is a lot of meadows with ox. A lot of ox.
Yeah.
Very cool.
The street in the street lives a very curious, a very particular bird called gralha. This bird, it's like a
Raven.
Yeah,
it's our
yeah. That's
raven.
all great things. That's all great.
Yeah,
those types of trees, the meadows, the groves. Groves are also great if you have those, and ravens around. That's perfect places to set up for any religious, any Norse kind of practices. Germanic, yeah.
Yeah, so we have that, and then we try to use it, when possible, because life sometimes get in the way. But in my practice, I something that I have in my heart is that part of Havamal where it says, "Do you know how to offer? It's better to not offer at all than to offer too much, or it's better to not offer at all than to offer too little or to ask for too much." So I usually I go by that rule, very pragmatic, very very pragmatic, just following because so that's the situation here. In the rest of Brazil, it's much more tropical. The forests are much harder for you to enter, because they're dense and extremely hot. So by the way, we had snow in the state where I live. There was snow last night.
Wow.
In some cities.
Yeah, didn't know. Never know. Yeah, sounds great. A good place. I'd love to visit one day. We'll see.
Well,
when I can make it.
If you ever come here, you already know who to contact. I strongly suggest that you come in April or May or June, because then the weather is the best weather you're gonna have. It's not gonna be too hot.
Not so hot. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, like it's gonna
maybe
be
still too hot for me.
Probably. How familiar are you with 30 Celsius?
Yeah, that's too hot.
Okay.
Way too hot.
Well,
15 to 20 is perfect for me.
Okay, yeah. So it should be July then, because it should be July, because January, definitely don't come here in January, because you're gonna have like a thermal sensation of.
Will be a hell for you.
Yeah.
Will be like a hell.
You don't want to experience the thermal sensation of 50 Celsius that I have already felt 2 times in my life, and I remember each one of those days because they were the worst days ever. So but then it's the same for us. Like, people here, they say they love cold, and I say, it's because you've never been to Norway, because that is cold. What we have here is not cold. It's like a breeze. It's a walk in the park. You're not going to freeze your fingertips if you go outside. That would be real cool.
Have any of you guys ever been to Europe or somewhere there, traveled?
No, I haven't.
Me neither.
Yeah, some good flights.
But it's a goal to visit Norway. Germania. Will be great. Will be awesome.
Yeah, let me know when you go. Sounds good.
Yes, I will text you and say, hey, we're bringing the whole gang. Do you have?
You've got my number now. I'm gonna be in Los Angeles for a bit longer, but I think I'm moving to Colorado also later on this year. But I'm trying to set it up so I can go back and forth from Europe to America pretty often with some business stuff.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so guys, we're gonna have to wrap it up because our time is short. Unfortunately, it was great. Thor, it was great talking to you. Thank you for sharing your time with us and sharing the perspective of someone who is actually Norwegian, Scandinavian, and not someone that lives in another continent. And I think it was very insightful, not only because it kind of reinforced some of the things we had in mind, but also because I think I particularly liked what you said about how the magic is simple and not necessarily so formal, because I believe that's kind of a barrier for many people. The things I can do, like offerings, this kind of things. That's definitely a barrier for me. I usually think, okay, I'm not doing this right. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to meet all of you. Obrigado.
I see. Well, it's an honor to speak for you. Your channel has always been a reference to me, and thank you.
Yes, happy to help. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, guys. Anybody that's going to watch this.
Thank you. Obrigado, pessoal.
I'm going to finish in português. Obrigado, pessoal. Próxima. Obrigado pela presença aí. E vamos continuando as lives do Germânia. Elas estão sensacionais. Um abraço.
Os grandes candidatos vindos aí para a gente entrevistar, e segue a gente que vai ser bem legal. Thor, thank you again.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
All right.